President Muhammadu Buhari has promised to use all resources at his disposal to deal with terrorists and bandits across the country. Speaking with reporters at the Eid prayers at the presidential villa in Abuja, Buhari says his government will provide adequate security for farmers in order to ensure that food production is sustained across the country. He appealed to Nigerians for more support and patience as government deals with challenges of insecurity among critical issues.
The law enforcement agencies are working hard to regain confidence against the bandits so that people can go back to the land. This is very important. This is what the law enforcement agents are very busy about now. The rainy season is coming, so we want people to go back to the land so that we can get enough food for the country and even export. Well, within the last few weeks, we had about 7 hours meeting. I think the National Security Advisor has briefed after each meeting. He had gone public to what he could go public with and explain that we understand the problem and we are hoping Nigerians will understand the problem. Nigerians know at which stage we came, 2015, what stage we are now, both on security, both on economy. And we are going by the Constitution, we are doing our best. But with the resources available and the manpower available to us, we are working very hard, and I think the National Assembly is cooperating very well. Within the resources available to us, they are certainly giving us priority in our requirements, and we are doing our best. The important thing is the elites must make the attempt to understand the military. If we order, say, weapons and armored vehicles, it takes time for the manufacturers. It takes time when it is brought here eventually, shipped here, taken to our training institutions, training the trainers, and then sending them to. This is a very, very long process. And even if you can have contact with the retired military chaps, they will tell you the difference between the time we came and now, how much hardware we have got, how much training we have done, and so on. So I think we are doing our best. I expect Nigerians to be more understanding and try to understand the issues involved within the time limit and the resources available to the country. For example, as I said, when we came in, people knew what we are in the northeast. If you don't know, go and ask people from Borno, from Adamawa, the difference in terms of security. And without security, you can't do anything. And in the south, our biggest surprise and disappointment is what is happening in the northwest. And we are dealing with it.
We must go back to our local government system to ensure that the local governments continue to be autonomous, continue to be functional in order to complement whatever the states and the federal governments will be doing. So on the whole, I want to congratulate Nigerians and I want to commend our non-Muslim brothers and sisters. So many of them prayed for us, so many of them in solidarity fasted with us, and this is the kind of nation we want to continue to have.
This is not a time for name calling or blame or blaming one person or the other. If truth be told, we all have equal shares in the blame in whatever challenges we have, and we all must come together. The same way we all have equal shares, we must all come together to make sure that we resolve whatever issues, whatever.
All right, Tony, your take on all this.
Well, it's good to hear from our national paterfamilias, who is usually reticent, but I have to say that he who wants to be understood, he who expects to be understood, like the president said, he expects understanding from the elite. If you expect to be understood, then you must be willing to constantly explain. You have to communicate. I was trying to think the other day of how many great leaders I can think of who were not great communicators. Zero, frankly. So communication is key. Explain it, and then see if people accept your explanation. Now, the angle that the president has taken is that of food insecurity, which is extremely important. There was a report from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization that said there are 9 million Nigerians facing food insecurity as a result of the insecurity in this country. Farmers cannot go to their land, and then the displaced people cannot obviously farm. So, and that was up until May. Between June and August, they're estimating almost 13 million, 12.8 million Nigerians facing critical levels of food insecurity. So that's an important angle that the president has touched on. So I appreciate that comment. And he mentioned security improving in Adamawa and Borno states. But according to that UN report, they are the most vulnerable in terms of food insecurity. They named Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe specifically. So clearly, even though the president feels that there have been vast improvements there needs to be a lot more work done in that regard.
Well, the job of a statesman, of a leader, is to give the people hope. You must consistently give the people hope so that you can reassure them, so that they must think that the government that you lead is working for them. So at the level of all the statements made by the president, what he has done is just the usual thing, to reassure the people, to give them hope, and to remind them that government is making significant efforts. But Nigerians have reached a stage now where security has become so important, so consuming, has become the main topic of the day. The people of Nigeria, are saying that unless this Buhari government deals with the challenge of security, which is one of the major planks on which he was elected in 2015. In 2015, Nigerians voted a man that they saw as a war veteran, as a man from the security sector, who could deal with the problem that Nigeria faced at that time. The major problem then was national security, Boko Haram, terrorism on the northeastern flank of the country. Now, by the end of this month, it will be 6 years since President Buhari took over. Now, 6 years later, he's still asking for understanding. I don't think, whether it's at the elite level or at the common man level, the ordinary man or the elite in Nigeria will be impressed that this government has been able to confront the security challenge, decisively and in line with their expectations. Now, again, let's stress the point that the purpose of government, as stated in section 14, subsection 2, 3 of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, is to ensure the security and welfare of the Nigerian people. 6 years after the Buhari administration, many are not convinced that the government has been able to move the needle in that direction. And that's why these days, you'll find a lot of stakeholders asking for resignation, asking for impeachment. Because to many Nigerians, out of the SEA agenda of the Buhari administration, the most important is security. Because without security, you cannot do anything. And we have reached a point now where Nigerians are even saying, will 2023 general elections even take place? Now, if government does not do something decisively with this security matter, you will then find that as we approach 2023, people will start saying maybe there is a hidden agenda to extend the electoral cycle by 6 months that is provided for in the Constitution. And I hope that the government is prepared to deal with that, and to see that as a wake-up call. Now, the president will appear to be giving excuses when he says, for example, that it takes a long time to procure military weapons and hardware and software, and it takes a long time to train the people. Well, an average Nigerian will say, okay, it has taken 6 years to procure hardware and software and to provide training. So how much longer will it take? Will it take beyond 2023 when the administration will no longer be in office? So these are the critical questions that have been raised, and I'm not surprised that the Sultan, the Arewa Youth Forum, the ACF, everybody I've been saying there is need to deal with the security challenge. That should be the takeaway for the president.
All right. Well, we'll go for a quick commercial break. When we return, we'll have Rotus, Michael, Ladesua, and Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, sport and activities. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. We'll move out to Rotus Otiri. Rotus, great to have you. Good morning, Rotus. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. So, still along the lines of the discussion you just had on insecurity, there was a special that we played yesterday on INEC expanding voting booths in Bayelsa State in the south. And, you know, I have to say the Arise TV newsroom is probably second only to the This Day newspaper newsroom for rigorous debates, because we started talking about the insecurity issues, the gunmen attacking polling booths, the amount of people that it takes, that congregate around these booths and so on and so forth. The special we ran yesterday was talking about how INEC wants to expand the voting booths in order to maybe disperse all these crowds that you're looking at. And I made the point yesterday that, look, why not engage banks and telcos? And I used the example of fingerprints ATM withdrawals. Up until this point, there's only one bank that I'm aware of that has been offering fingerprints withdrawals from ATMs. Just one tier one bank. Now, I then there was an ad in today's This Day newspaper. Actually, today, lo and behold, I was flipping through today's newspaper. There it is. That's the ad. We edited it just to take out the bank, but by the colors, you might be able to guess which bank it is. So there's a second bank now that is advertising fingerprint withdrawals from an ATM. So now there's two. And I don't know how the second bank is doing it, but for the first bank that does it, it requires you to put in your telephone number. First of all, you put your thumb or forefinger on the scanner, as you can see on the screen. First it'll ask you for your phone number. You input your phone number into using the keypad. Second, it asks you to put your thumb or forefinger on the scanner. Third, I could have sworn I heard the camera whirl, so I think there's three levels of authentication before you can withdraw money. So if that is the case, and you've got these three levels of security for you to take out money, why can't INEC engage the banks in order to allow the same three-level authentication process for folks to vote? I understand that not everyone has a bank account. There's issues of financial inclusion. But if you take the 38 to 40 plus million BVNs out there and attribute that to people allowed to vote, if you assume that all 37, 40 something million people actually go and vote, that's a sizable number taken out of the number of people that will be voting. By the way, because voting numbers have actually trended downwards, you would still take a sizable number of people off the lines, that the long lines we see at voting booths in order to vote at an ATM. Again, this is just theoretical. Secondly, before even talking about banks, the previous argument I've made for electronic voting is through mobile phones, right? So essentially, if you think Arise TV, Arise News rather, has covered extensively the registration around the NIN numbers, yes, with respect to SIM cards. Now, it is understood that, yes, a number of Nigerians each have multiple phones, right? People have more than one phone line. But through the telcos, through the SIM cards, a primary number can be designated for a particular user using the SIM cards and if you can even involve the NIN if you want to. So that's prior to even involving banks. So again, one, using telecommunications companies for authentication. Two, and by the way, teledensity is over 100%. If you want to excuse the argument that not everybody has a bank account, a lot of people have phones. So that's one, through the telcos. Two, ATM voting from the banks. So between those two private sector players, you've got a sizable number of the population that you can now make voting a lot more easier. Between now and 2023, surely a test case, a simple pilot case can be tested with a small population of people using phones or using ATMs. You involve the private sector, you contract it out. Can we not do that before 2023? In other news, and going over to Kenya, Safaricom, who owns M-Pesa, is seeking to onboard M-Pesa on Amazon. They're apparently in talks with Amazon right now to get M-Pesa on their platform. They want to expand the number of options that Kenyans use in order to pay for products and services, or rather products on e-commerce platforms. And so it probably is a bit of a threat to other, if you think about the way we make payments here in Nigeria, we primarily use our bank cards. Well, over in Kenya, they primarily use M-Pesa. So that is one extra option that they all want to use for Kenyans to be able to make payments. Right now, they're still in talks. It's not quite formalized yet. But M-Pesa is making strides into e-commerce, and you can think about what this means for other players, with mobile money players, with respect to the relationship with e-commerce going forward. And that's our update.
I mean, amazing. It's long overdue because M-Pesa is widely very successful in Kenya. I mean, when you look at the revenue of Safaricom, it makes up about 1/3 of the revenue of Safaricom when Safaricom launched M-Pesa, and it's worked very well for them. I mean, there's a joke going around. It's not even a joke. It's true that you can give a police officer a bribe with M-Pesa in Kenya. That's to show how widely accepted it is in Kenya. And if Amazon really wants to integrate that African market and that very fast world digital market out of Kenya, definitely then M-Pesa is the way to go. As regards e-voting, I think we have all the data points on ground. And this has always been, the challenge as regards digitizing our electoral and voting system. Like you stated very boldly, we have all the data points on ground. It's just for us to be able to harmonize this data point, sync this data point, and ensure that the technology works. Because you see, the funny thing for me is the fact that the technology will not work in the end because of human factor. I mean, look at the
ports.
The ports, the A2. The A2 app we talked about.
Yeah.
The reason the technology is not working because human beings are sabotaging it. They don't want it to work because they know if it works, then definitely they'll not be able to make corrupt money in the end. So are we ready, really? Are politicians ready to give up all of this? But we really need this so that we can get more inclusive elections and elections that can really capture true data, not funny data.
Well, quickly, on electronic voting and the model from the banking sector, fintech, from the fintech end of it, yes, I think it's good in terms of aspiration. For the banks, I hope we'll not get to a situation whereby they will be cutting off people's fingers, from the thumb to the other fingers to go and commit fraud, because that could be easy, despite your point about a 3-level, identification process. But now you've moved from there to voting, actual voting in Nigeria. And one argument in Nigeria has been about, raising the level of technology. We have a minimum level of, electronic adoption or process in the voting process. The use of the EVS, the use of biometrics and all of that. But if you scale it up, there will be other issues in terms of the number of registered voters and the number of people who actually vote. How do you monitor that, in terms of ensuring accountability and transparency? The other issue, of course, has to do with the constitutional requirement. Section 52, subsection 2, I think, of the Electoral Act talks about electronic voting. And INEC has talked about electronic voting. After the 2019 general elections, INEC even promised that elections before the 2023 general elections will involve electronic voting. But we still need to amend the Electoral Act 2010. It's one of the major promises that this National Assembly gave, and they were saying that, look, this will be delivered before the general elections in 2023. But the same National Assembly that spoke through Senator Ahmed Lawan, the Senate President, has not moved an inch in that direction, as far as I am concerned. They could have moved faster. So can they move beyond rhetoric so that we will have enough time to test some of these new innovations that we are talking about? In 2019, 2018, the Electoral Act the amended Electoral Act could not come into effect because the ruling government came and said, oh, it was too close to the election. If we're going to adopt technology, then we have to take these steps early enough. That's the first point. That's for M-Pesa. Yes, M-Pesa is doing very well. M-Pesa is mobile money. Pesa means pesa. Pesa means money in Swahili.
Yes.
And it's all about financial inclusion. And M-Pesa is perhaps the best model in Africa. and they control about 64% of the market, where they operate, particularly in Kenya. This is not the first time they are talking of reaching out to Amazon. I think they have an existing relationship already with Amazon and PayPal, right? So the question for me, financial inclusion also being a major priority for us in Nigeria from the policy end. What are we doing in Nigeria to promote that policy inclusion, financial inclusion? What are we doing in Nigeria to learn from the example of M-Pesa's success? There was a drop in profit for M-Pesa. Hence this attempt to reach out further and expand their cooperation with Amazon. But it's fine to admire what they are doing in Kenya. What are we doing here?
Right.
I want you to talk about that drop in profit, Reuters. What are your thoughts on Kenya's central bank asking Safaricom to drop some of their charges in order to encourage Kenyans to not use cash during the pandemic, which had a detrimental effect on their bottom line?
Yeah, I see. I mean, there have to be other ways that you can scale your services that doesn't involve dropping charges, because we've seen the impact. I understand what the Kenyan Central Bank is trying to do in order to scale it and include more people, but should that now come at a cost? Because if you got your second line item on your income statement is cost of goods sold, which is below your revenue line, and that is the cost of you putting forward these services that people enjoy. So I wasn't really in support of that, because you can see the detriments to the bottom line of the company. There's got to be other ways that you can scale those services without, forcing them to have to drop charges, because it's cost of doing business.
And that money is really very important to be able to run the infrastructure and the software and the ecosystem, because so there's this feeling, a lot of people feel that tech is free. It's not free. You still actually have to buy the rack center. There's an infrastructure on ground. It costs money. You still actually have to have physical structure on ground where you put on the rack center, the systems, the software, and everything to store this. And you see, and why I deliberately said that is, it's just the same argument banks are making in this country as regards USSD.
Right.
Because I'm sure banks just think USSD falls from the sky. But these people pay for rack centers. Exactly. You've got Main One, you've got... what's this Tunde Coker's rack center again? Somewhere in on the mainland. So people actually pay for rack centers where all of this data go, and they have to service that. So tech comes with a lot of infrastructure, and that's where government should bridge the gap.
Rotus, we don't have that infrastructure yet in Nigeria. And when you recommend that system of electronic voting, you assume that every voter in Nigeria goes to the polling booth, particularly in some parts of the country that we know.
Yeah.
Well, you figure that out.
If you know, you know.
Exactly.
Thanks, Rotus. Really appreciate you. All right, we'll move on to business update with Michael Wilson. Joins us now from London. Michael.
Yeah, good morning. No overall thing really, apart from, thank you, uncertain. I'll just give you three snapshots to start with, and then we'll look at the Asian markets. But first of all, Alibaba, Hong Kong listed shares actually plunged. The firm posted its first operating loss as a public company, its fiscal fourth quarter. We know that was about the China fire. Dow up 400 points overnight. Investors continue to monitor what's going on with the coronavirus increase in India. 4,000 COVID-19 related deaths reported for the second straight day yesterday. So Asian markets then rose in Friday trade following that overnight bounce from the United States. Nikkei up 2.33. These are quite significant ones. Mainland China stocks also up over 1%. And as I said, Hong Kong listed shares of Alibaba down by 5% in today's trade in Asia because of the firm posting its first operating loss in its fourth quarter. Straits Times index in Singapore fell 1% in Friday trade. That's because it's likely that the air travel bubble that had been proposed between Hong Kong and Singapore will not begin on May the 26th. China, now one of their electric car manufacturers, XPeng, expects chip shortages for most of the year now. It's also doing is it's concentrating on self-driving software. It's going to deliver between 15,500 and 16,000 vehicles in the second quarter. Company said it's topped its forecast for this year, but while the majority of its car sales account for the majority of its revenue. It's also thinking that customer demand for its assisting driving software will increase as well. And as far as electrical vehicles in China are concerned, the budget mini EV, the Wuling Hongguang mini EV, is the best seller. I mention this only because Tesla's Model 3 ranked second, but Tesla's Model Y, which is going to be launched to customers in China in January, which did launch rather in January, fell to sixth place. So people, again, what they're doing is, I think they're looking at cheaper cars as being a way into electric cars. Chip shortage, global cost estimate, I've got $110 billion over 2021. That's according to a leading consulting firm. I've got some breaking news from IBM. Their president has come out and said this chip shortage could last for a couple of years. So we need to keep an eye on that as underlying things. Australia, according to its Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack, is going to be patient in its discussions about trade and diplomatic relations. And he was asked what would he be willing to do to bring China to the negotiating table, and he said we're going to be very patient, but also we're going to broaden our trade interests. However, although a lot of Australia's economy and exports have suffered because of these bans, if you look at the figures, Chinese imports from Australia rose 49% over the past year, and exports rose from China to Australia by 20%. That's according to China's customs agency. So make those figures as you will. US now, so let's recap the markets there. NASDAQ notably behind, a major factor helping rebound in stocks. On some of the exchanges yesterday was a decline in US 10-year bonds. PPI figures, though, adding to those inflationary pressures we've been talking about within the economy, bigger than expected rise. We're going to get 2 or 3 months of this, I still feel. I don't think anybody we can discuss this. I don't think anybody right now is expecting the Fed to increase interest rates, but it does raise the question of whether they should be competing with their buying back bonds with their quantitative easing. We got large retail sales figures in the United States coming up today as well. It's notable that the US consumer has been quite resilient. Just think about those stimulus checks. The big question is, as we were saying yesterday, they don't expect April numbers, we're looking back a month now, to be as robust as they were at the beginning of the year. But the big question, has that helicopter money actually all been spent, or people just hang on to it? That's what we don't know. Turns out that Colonial did pay a ransom. It's been reported that the pipeline attack, they paid $5 million ransom to the perpetrators of the cyber attack. That's a report out this morning, unconfirmed. US official who talked on condition of anonymity, as they often do, has said that they did pay it, but no details of where and when and so on. And Joe Biden, the president of the United States, has been saying to motorists, hang on a second, take it easy, don't go to the gas station today. If you're going to drive over the weekend, have a day at home, try to stop demand. We are getting supplies back as quickly as we can. Just got some breaking news on cyberware attacks as well, that Ireland this morning, this is the big island off us, Ireland, ERA has actually shut down its health service because of computer cyber attacks this morning. So that's a breaking news. So it's still continuing. I don't know who it is yet, though. Amazon on a hiring spree in Canada and the United States. I mean, it says it all, basically. They're offering staff incentives if they've had an injection. Average starting pay up to $17 an hour following the recent wages increases it introduced. So that's what they're offering right now. Airbnb, seeing bookings surge. People actually still want to get away. That's the American-based service. It's seeing an improvement in business in the UK and France. However, as far as us and as far as the rest of Europe actually getting together over its borders, Portugal is now closed down again. That's breaking news from early this morning. Greece is looking forward to opening up, but to whom and when, we don't know. So these countries are desperate for tourists to come and visit them to help their economy, but it's all been complicated by COVID, as you'd expect. So, what we're doing is my family and other friends of mine are playing it safe, basically saying, do you know what, we'll probably cut the lawn and have a summer here rather than going abroad, because we just don't know where we're going to be week by week, even day by day sometimes. UK economy is set to grow at its fastest pace since the Second World War. That's according to Andy Haldane, who is Deputy Chief Economist at the Bank of England. He's on his way, but he does talk about inflation risks as well, as everybody's doing it now. Sanjeev Gupta's bank may fail. Liberty Steel is now threatened a bit more. It's all to do with this sort of mashup of Greenshill and Gupta's bank and Liberty Steel and so on. The backing, the government's turned down a request to provide any funding for the steel industry. Oil prices relatively subdued. But the big one to watch out for, I think, and I'm seeing more signs of this, not gold, it's silver. It often is in the shadow of gold, but it shouldn't be. Demand for the precious metal has actually shot up over the past 12 months, trading around $27 an ounce on Wednesday, 74% rise since the beginning of the year. It's used from everything from electronics, photography, jewelry, coins, integral to numerous other everyday products, and also, of course, car manufacture too. So as the economy gradually gets underway, again with all the hiccups we mentioned from every day, it looks like silver is not a bad bet right now.
Well, quickly,
not that it's down for me, but it's down for me to bet, of course.
Well, quickly, Michael, a couple of issues. The first one is Amazon. Amazon says they are hiring about 75,000 new workers in Canada and the US, and they are offering an incentive of $100 per person who has been fully vaccinated. And that raises the question about COVID-19 vaccination incentive. It's not just, Amazon that is talking about this. Even countries are talking about it. Serbia, for example, is offering $30. Detroit, the city of Detroit in the United States, is offering money. In Ohio, the governor, Mike DeWine, is saying that you can get involved in a lottery of about $1 million. And if you're a younger person, 12 to 17 years, you can get a free full scholarship if you get vaccinated. What do you think of this initiative? Even the U.S. government says it's partnering with Uber and Lyft to incentivize people who take the vaccine. Do you think that this will be helpful? Because some experts are saying it doesn't matter anyway. Those who won't take the vaccine won't take the vaccine. That's number one. China has been talking about supporting the waiver, the proposed waiver on COVID-19 patent. China supporting the waiver of intellectual property rights. Should we trust China? Isn't there a contradiction there, considering that China is the biggest culprit?
Couldn't possibly comment on trust. But I would say what you do is you watch what people do and not what they say. I think that China is joining in. If what this shows is the fact that China is now getting back into the mainstream of where things are going and stopping the wolf diplomacy that it was deploying towards the end of the year and is now joining in, then all well and good. We did actually talk about the downside of the waiver of patents. I mean, what you're saying is that there's a helter-skelter demand to get these vaccinations delivered. And if you're stopping the safety aspect of those, which you may well be, then I think that's a problem. But again, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I mean, I would say, looking at it from the outside, that would be my problem with it. As far as incentives for vaccinations are concerned, I would just go back to what our Queen said, actually, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which I reported to you. She said this: do take a vaccination. It's not for you necessarily, but it's for other people. I think that the incentivization may well work. The chances of a lottery, I'm sure you do, the odds are much slimmer than actually being struck by lightning. So I don't see many people. I mean, people look at $1 million and think, oh, it'd be nice to win that. But actually, it takes away the sensible decision from people. It infantilizes the whole thing. I think, again, as our Queen said, you do it for other people. In other words, we are now, no man is an island. I'm sorry to keep saying this, but that's the way that this pandemic is actually pushing itself. Sure, some of the incentives may work. It does risk, of course, making a two-tier world of those who've had vaccinations because they were available and those who haven't had them, not because they don't want to, because they're not available. So I think there are many countries around the world, and you can look at the global list. I won't bore you with them, but some of the countries right down that list, you look at them and think, why are they so far down that list? So it's much more complicated than merely saying to people, here's a big come on for having an injection. You're doing it for other people.
All right. Real quickly, Michael, I want to talk about South Korea spending a lot of money on semiconductors. They have a grand plan, to be able to shore up the production of semiconductors. Does that tell you something? And going back to Colonial, there's a story out there that says the $5 million they say Colonial paid, not necessarily true. That they must have paid more than that because that money is chump change for Colonial. $5 million for a cyber attack. And are we not supporting or emboldening criminals by paying at all for things like this? I thought Colonial will have brought in a hack force to unhack the hackers at dark side.
Right. So there were reports that they paid $5 million. Nobody has actually said that they have or they haven't. There are reports that, in other words, according to a source that wished to remain anonymous in the US administration, said that they had paid that. I agree with you. I think if you give in to ransomware and to attacks and so on, then you are funding criminality in the same way that if you snort cocaine, you're doing exactly the same kind of thing. It looks pretty harmless. It looks as though it's something which you need to do, you want to do in the moment, but it's actually not paying attention. Now, does Colonial have a slush fund? It may well do. I don't know. I'm not privy to what their board says. I suspect there's a lot of companies in their boardrooms are looking at what's going on right now and thinking, all right, so what do we do? What do we take advice from governments? Not necessarily. Do we just do it ourselves and say, all right, yeah, okay, you got us. As you're quite right, $5 million must be nothing to Colonial, but a lot to people who do the ransomware. There is no answer to your question. It's really how bold. I mean, hostage taking has been going on ever since God was a boy, hasn't it? I mean, it's one of those kind of things. And you have to make a decision as whether you give in to kidnappers or you don't. And in this case, you give in to ransomware or you don't. It's a board and it's a corporate decision. I don't know the answer to your question, is the bottom line. You were talking about companies being making semiconductors themselves. Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is going to become a strategic industry. There's no question about that. We did report on the fact that the United States was starting to do that towards the end of last year. And this Chinese car manufacturer saying this morning it's doing exactly the same thing, is doing exactly the same thing. So I think that semiconductors are part of strategic industries equipment. And that's the way forward, basically. Be interested to see how this actually works out. I don't know why IBM's getting involved, but I did say that the president of IBM saying there could be a chip shortage for a couple of years. I mean, have to say it does help semiconductor manufacturers, doesn't it, to weigh heavily on the shortage because it pushes the price up at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesso Omoro is here with us. Adesso, great to have you this morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning, Tundu. Well, in the last 24 hours, over 473,000 coronavirus infections have been recorded and over 10,000 deaths, pushing the totals to what you're going to have on your screen in just about a moment, according to the Johns Hopkins University tally. Well, while rich countries are hoping to vaccinate their way out of this pandemic, new mutating variants and, of course, slow vaccination in other parts of the world are proof that no one is safe till everyone is safe. Again, a reminder that what you have in the bold green color, according to Johns Hopkins University, is the number of vaccines against COVID-19 that have been administered globally. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday said he was anxious about the spread of the Indian variant as cases more than doubled in the UK from 520 to 1,313 in just a week, according to Public Health England. It's a case of different strokes for different folks, really. While we are seeing a decline in infections globally this week, South Asian countries and in the Americas are dealing with a surge in cases and deaths. Greece is about to welcome tourists from the United States and Europe as long as they are vaccinated or test negative for COVID-19. Here in Nigeria, 53 new infections were recorded in just 3 states, Lagos, Rivers, and Akwa Ibom. Lagos posting the most infections. No deaths related to COVID-19 have been recorded in the last 24 hours in the country. According to the NPHCDA latest data, 15,310 people were inoculated in the last 24 hours against COVID-19 in Nigeria. So vaccination continues against COVID-19 in the country. In South Africa, the most affected country on the continent, a report into excess deaths over the past year suggests that more than 133,000 people in the country have died from COVID-19, and that's far more than the official tally of nearly 55,000. The South African Medical Research Council, that's the SAMRC, has been monitoring excess deaths since May 2020. Now, what is excess deaths? They are typically defined as the difference between the observed numbers of deaths in the specific time periods and the expected numbers of deaths in the same time periods. Some experts think that this is not limited to South Africa alone, as most countries record deaths that occur in the hospitals as COVID-19 deaths. To India now, where hospitals have become so overwhelmed with COVID-19 patients that some states have decided to administer a drug against the advice of the World Health Organization. The states of Gao and Uttar Pradesh have announced that they will be administering the antiparasitic ivermectin to protect against severe COVID infections. But you recall that just a few weeks ago, the WHO had said evidence of the drug working was inconclusive and recommended its use only in clinical trials. There was also a manufacturer of the drug, Merck, that said it also does not have available data to support using the drug as a COVID-19 treatment. I know, Dr. Abati, you expressed surprise seeing the drug listed as a treatment by the Lagos State government yesterday. Perhaps the Lagos State government will be able to provide some data to its efficacy if it's a part of their treatment regimen against COVID-19 in the state. But for now, the WHO and the drug maker advise against its usage. And still in India, India's health ministry has been defending the government's effort in tackling the surge in COVID-19 cases around the country. Dr. Vinod Paul, who you have on the left side of your screen, is a member of the Planning Commission, and he says 1/3 of the population over 45 years of age have received at least 1 shot of the vaccine. He also said the country plans to have more than 2 billion doses available for public use between August and December this year. The doses would include AstraZeneca, produced by the Serum Institute, and Covaxin by the Bharat Biotech. And at the risk of repeating what you've already said, Dr. Bhatt, you talked about the incentive in Ohio, but the odds of winning that lottery, the $1 million for 5 people in 5 big drawings, is 1 in 5 million.
Democrats and Republicans who are saying that Governor DeWine cannot use federal funds to run a lottery. So opinion is divided on that. But generally what we know is that in the United States, about 45% of the population has been fully vaccinated. About 38% has been able to receive at least 1 dose. And I guess it was on the basis of that we had that great moment yesterday in the United States, whereby the President of the United States, Joe Biden, came to the forecourt of the White House lawn, without wearing a mask. Yes. And it's been announced by federal health officials that in the United States, if you have been fully vaccinated, you do not need to wear a mask or observe physical distancing. And President Biden has been celebrating that. However, the level of vaccination in the United States varies from one part of the country to the other. And maybe that's what justifies this incentivization of immunization by states like Ohio, Chicago, and some other parts of the United States. As for South Africa, yes, we know it. Undercount is part of the problem. And you are right, it's not just in South Africa that there is a case of undercount. What is important is for the authorities in South Africa that have now rolled out immunization on a grand scale, would listen to what the scientists are saying and pay very close attention to it. In India, yes, ivermectin. I mentioned it yesterday, as you pointed out. I think we need more information on that because that's not WHO recommendation. That's not even the recommendation of the scientists in India. But the two states, what we should note, the two states, Goa and Uttarakhand, they are BJP states. They are states of Narendra Modi. So is this a connection with the fact that we have a government in place in India, a party, in power at the center, which down the line does not have enough respect for science. But in another news, India is now using Sputnik 5, and that brings it up to 3. The vaccines now being deployed in India, despite the skepticism raised again by scientists in India about the Russian Sputnik 5.
Well, Adeswa, my comments about Ohio is, well, it's a bit gimmicky, isn't it? But the real issue for me is having people who have only taken 1 dose of a vaccine entered into this lottery scheme. Why not wait until they get 2 doses so that those who take the 1 dose and are entered and win or don't win, don't then just sit at home and fold their arms? Why not do it for people who are fully vaccinated? That's my question. And the second point is about Joe Biden in the Rose Garden. I mean, the optics of that, standing there without a mask because he has trusted the science and is fully vaccinated, compared to the super spreader event in the Trump era, which seems like so long ago now, in that same Rose Garden, in the middle of a pandemic where nobody was wearing masks. You could not be more different in terms of approach from these two leaders.
Indeed. President Joe Biden has followed the science all through, and he continues to follow the science as majority have gotten at least a shot of the COVID-19 vaccine. And you also recall that scientists say the risk of getting the infection outdoors is quite lower than indoors. As for Ohio, I do agree with you, Tundun, that perhaps they should wait for the second dose, but it speaks to the desperation of the government and, of course, the declined vaccination uptake in the states.
All right, thank you so much, Adesso. I really appreciate you